What's up everyone, my name is Ale. Welcome back to my world of stocks. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about Chinese stocks because not only did they just have one of their worst performing days in their entire history just a couple days ago, but I have never seen Chinese stocks crash by this large of an amount from their highs, I think really ever before. And the reason why this matters so much is because not only do I own Chinese stocks myself, which makes it personal to me, but many of you guys have exposure to Chinese stocks as well. In fact, as of last week, there were over 260 Chinese stocks listed in America, worth close to $800 billion of investment. So seeing them crash by this much is a huge deal. For example, the KWEB China Internet ETF, which includes popular Chinese stocks like Alibaba, JD, Tencent, and Baidu as some of its largest holdings, just crashed by over 14% on Monday, leaving it down over 15% for the past week and a mind-blowing over 80% down from its highs, with most popular Chinese stocks having the same exact performance. So I just can't leave you guys in the dark like this. Let's do an update video on everything that's going on. I'll explain why the stocks have been crashing, why they're crashing even more right now. I'll give you my opinion on it, and I'll let you know if I see this as a massive, like once in a lifetime type of buying opportunity, or if I just see it as a giant risky mess to stay away from. Let's dive into all of it. Okay, so taking a look here, why have Chinese stocks been crashing all this time, and what happened this week in particular that sent them down another giant amount? Well, for one, the pandemic initially sent many Chinese internet and tech-related stocks soaring because people were staying home and using the internet for work, school, and entertainment. But after that initial spike, the bubble ended up bursting because of the economic fallout from all of those lockdown policies, which, by the way, China is still going through lockdowns even to this day because of their zero pepperoni policy, where as soon as a spike in cases occurs, the city goes into a hard lockdown to prevent any further spread. In fact, their biggest financial hub of Shanghai was just recently released from a 2-month lockdown at a time when most of the world's economies have already been allowed to open for more than a year. The result has been supply chain issues and factory shutdowns that have taken a toll on their already struggling GDP growth that is at the lowest levels in over 3 decades apart from the 2020 crash, while also inflating the currency as the government creates more money out of thin air in order to keep the economy afloat while people stay home, as China's inflation rate has now climbed to a 29-month high, with over 80% of Chinese consumers saying that they're feeling the impact of inflation, which is also up from an already massive 69% the year before. But on top of that, it hasn't just been the economy that is crippling these Chinese stocks. One of the biggest concerns among investors is the fear that they will be delisted from the US from their exchanges because of their lack of transparency with US regulators, as well as having ties to the Chinese government. For example, former President Donald Trump banned investment in several Chinese telecommunication companies like China Mobile, China Unicom, and China Telecom that were all believed to have ties to the Chinese military. And that pressure has stuck around even through a Democrat administration, as current President Joe Biden worked with the SEC to begin the delisting process of Chinese stocks that fail to comply with stricter regulations in what is known as the Holding Foreign Companies Accountable Act. By the way, I personally agree with all of these policies because I think China should be held to the same standard as domestic companies here in the States, especially given their VIE structure that not only gives foreign investors very little ownership rights over the actual company, but are also notorious for having shady practices and not providing enough transparency, which, for example, resulted in the Chinese Starbucks clone known as Luckin Coffee to be delisted from the States, which sent the stock crashing and caused many US investors to lose a ton of money. Furthermore, the Chinese Communist government has been exerting their power and control over domestic companies, which has resulted in heavy fines and restrictions that hurt businesses even further, especially some of their largest tech giants that were growing too large for the party's comfort. For example, China fined Alibaba a record-breaking nearly $3 billion for acting like a monopoly and forming exclusive agreements with certain merchants that prohibited them from listing their products on rival platforms. They also accused Tencent's WeChat messaging app of hurting smaller competitors, while also restricting the video game market, which they compared to addictive drugs for the youth. And the government even went as far as to freeze many video games that resulted in a staggering 14,000 game-related companies to shut down in China. Now, the Google of China in Baidu, as well as the online shopping giant JD.com and several other large companies, have also been fined for over 40 different investment deals that they previously made without allegedly proper disclosure. All of these fines and concerns have sent Chinese stocks crashing into the ground, with most of them trading near or below decade lows. But this week, it escalated even further for new reasons that caused the Hong Kong exchange to suffer its worst one-day drop since the '09 financial crisis, leaving it now trading at almost the lowest point since that time. So what's going on now? Well, Monday's crash had mostly to do with two new concerns. One is China's third quarter GDP and economic update, while the other had to do with that same Chinese government that has pushed all of these policies, getting re-elected to a historic third term for President Xi. So let me just quickly update you on each of those, and then I'll give my personal opinion on it. Now, with the economy, third quarter GDP numbers weren't actually that bad, as they not only beat estimates with 3.9% growth reported year over year versus 3.4% expected, but it was also a giant improvement from the almost flat second quarter that they saw right before that. However, investors didn't like that year to date it's still sitting at only around 3% growth, which is not only significantly lower than the official target of 5.5%, a clear indication that lockdown policies are still hurting the economy, but it's also some of the lowest growth that China has seen in decades. Investors are also concerned about how long these policies will stick around, considering that the latest Congress in China refused to address them, while President Xi has actually defended the zero pepperoni lockdown policies on several different occasions. Which now brings us to the even bigger reason why Chinese stocks are continuing to sell off, and that's that in this last session of Congress, which is held every 5 years to announce any changes to the Communist Party leadership, well, the party basically gave Xi an unprecedented third term as president that will last for another 5 years, while also packing Congress with nothing but party loyalists to Xi, which scared investors into selling out of China because the party that has been cracking down on so many Chinese tech companies and implementing these strict lockdowns has only gotten stronger now and will be tightening its grip on the country. So Wall Street decided to sell out of Chinese stocks, with some analysts like Bernstein, for example, even going as far as to call the Chinese market uninvestable. However, others see an opportunity, like JP Morgan Chase, for example, saying that the sell-off is disconnected from fundamentals and is presenting a buying opportunity. And look, I gotta agree with Chase here. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am not a fan of China and their policies. In fact, I disagree with almost all of them. And there are countless reasons to be super skeptical and super cautious when even thinking about investing in any Chinese stock. But as far as people selling out of Chinese stocks right now just because the Communist Party is getting stronger and they're putting loyalists into the government, I mean, what exactly were you expecting here? This is the Communist Party that we're talking about. Anyone who thought that they were going to loosen their grip on the country is out of their minds, because you should have already known that this is how the Chinese government works. This is the party that's in charge, and you knew all of the other risks on top of that too that you were taking when you chose to invest in Chinese stocks. So acting surprised by it now does seem a little strange to me, but regardless, because of all of these risks, I only ever allow less than 10% of my portfolio into foreign stocks to begin with. But right now, I don't see more value and potential anywhere outside of the US, more so than I see in China right now. So I'm actually putting all of my foreign investment into Chinese stocks. Granted, it's actually only around 6% right now, but I capped that at less than 10% of my portfolio, but right now it's around 6. Anyway, assuming that Chinese stocks don't get delisted and assuming that their own government doesn't destroy these companies themselves, I don't think I've ever seen a bigger buying opportunity in Chinese stocks than I'm seeing right now. And so I am actually buying Chinese stocks, and I'm going to go ahead and let you know which ones those are. I'm really focusing on the biggest Chinese companies that are what I would consider to be the lower risk and a little more reliable, if that can be said at all. But these are the ones that I like the most, and they have giant potential, and they've been getting absolutely destroyed. But these are the ones I like the most, so let me just quickly run through those for you. And starting with number one, that's going to be Alibaba. You're talking about the most e-commerce market share at close to 50% in China, with the next closest competitor in JD.com all the way down to less than 17%, and numbers 4, 5, and 6 don't even have more than 2% each, while Baba also controls the most cloud market share at 38%. Stock number two, Tencent, who not only takes the number 3 spot in cloud market share, but they also have the most social media market share in China, while also holding the 3rd most market share in the entire world, only behind Google and Facebook, and they're even ahead of TikTok. Tencent also has the 2nd most mobile messaging users in the world, only behind Facebook's WhatsApp and Messenger. They have the most gaming market share at over half of the Chinese market. They generate the most gaming revenue in the entire world, even ahead of Sony with PlayStation, Microsoft with Xbox, and Nintendo with the Switch. And they even have the 2nd most mobile payments market share in China, only behind Alibaba's Alipay. And at number 3, I also really like Baidu, who is just as dominant as the previous 2 companies, with the 3rd most market share in cloud, the most search engine market share similar to Google, and also like Google, they have a huge presence in digital advertising at the 3rd most market share, only behind, you guessed it, Alibaba and Tencent. They were also the first company in China to launch a paid robotaxi service, which I think is a huge deal because over half of the mobility market in China will be driverless by 2030, and Baidu is projected to be the market leader of that. Plus, they not only have the most artificial intelligence patents in the entire country, with Tencent and Alibaba closely behind them too, but they also have the most AI patents in the entire world. And I'm sorry, but if China wants to be a global superpower, then they absolutely need these 3 giants to be successful long term in order to compete against their Western counterparts like Amazon, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and so on. And we're already seeing some signs of this. Back in April, China told the US that they would start allowing their regulators to come to China and conduct on-site audits of any US listed companies to prevent delistings. Also in April, they pledged more economic support to companies hurt by lockdowns. In May, they said that they will take targeted steps to support the economy, including tax credits, as well as various investment projects. In September, there was various policymakers saying that they need to increase the urgency of economic support. And just this month, Xi continued to stress all of these initiatives prior to and even through the last Congress, which all of it seems to be helping, considering that 3rd quarter GDP was a large rebound, even with all of the insane restrictions that continue to linger on. So once those restrictions go away, I think there could be a large recovery waiting to happen. But meanwhile, investors hate these stocks so much that Alibaba fell another 13% on Monday alone, leaving it down over 17% in the past week and more than 80% from its all-time highs, while Tencent is also down a mind-blowing 75% from its highs, and then Baidu is crashing just the same at over a 77% fall from the top. And look, I just think at these levels, the risk is worth it for me. I mean, we're talking about PE ratios, price earnings ratios for these stocks that are less than 10. They're in the single digits. I never thought I'd see such low PE ratios for any of these 3 stocks. And I hate the risks of Chinese stocks just as much as anyone, but I just think the risk here is worth it. I mean, these companies have so much potential, and if China wants any shot of being the biggest global superpower, I mean, I always hear people say that China's going to dominate the world one day. China's going to be the largest economy one day. People are always saying that. Well, if that's going to happen, China needs these companies to be successful because they are essentially the Western clones of companies like Microsoft and Facebook and Google and Amazon, but they're trading at a fraction of the cost, and they still have tremendous growth and so much potential and so much dominance. So for me, I think it's worth the risk. But look, I've been wrong so far on Chinese stocks. They continue to crash. They're probably going to continue to crash. So you shouldn't listen to me. You should just do the opposite of whatever I do. Don't copy me. Don't do what I do. But for me personally, I think the risk is worth it, and I cap it at less than 10%, and right now it's only 6% of my portfolio. I cap it there so that I lower my risk on it. But that's just how I feel. I would love to hear what you guys have to say down below, so drop your comments there. Do you own any Chinese stocks? Are you thinking about buying here, or do you just stay away? I completely understand both viewpoints, but I'd love to hear yours, and I will respond to your comments as well, so leave them down there. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hit the like button if you did enjoy the video. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks again. Hope you're all doing well. Take care. Bye-bye.